welcome to the 100th edition of Did You Know Doctor Who, or what you may not know about Doctor Who. This time we're going to have a look at the unfinished story, the epic known as Shada. I hope you enjoy. The original plan for the story was to be a 6-part finale where at the end, the Doctor retired. Under its original remit, Williams intended the story as a discussion about the death penalty, specifically how a civilization like the Time Lords would deal with the issue and treat its prisoners. During production of the serial, it was to be filmed during the second studio block and was due to start. It fell foul of a long-running technicians' dispute at the BBC. The strike was over by the onset of rehearsals for the third recording session, but ultimately the studio time was redirected to other higher priority Christmas programming, leaving the serial incomplete. Following the departure of Williams from the role of producer, attempts were made by new producer John Nathan Turner to remount the story. For various reasons, however, this never transpired. Consequently, in June 1980, the production was formally dropped. It is estimated that only 50% of the story was actually filmed. Footage of Shada was used during the 5 Doctors when the 4th Doctor is taken. For the 1992 VHS release, a decade after the serial's abandonment, John Nathan Turner set out to complete the story in a fashion by commissioning new effects shot and a score, and having Tom Baker record linking material to cover the missing scenes. Shada has had several adaptations. This includes the 1992 VHS release, a 2017 animated version, a 2021 animated version, and a Big Finish audiobook with the 8th Doctor instead of the 4th. By virtue of the several refilmed, reanimated audio recordings and the footage of an older Doctor at the end, Shada is technically the longest production of a Doctor Who story ever. Douglas Adams chose Cambridge as a setting so he could draw on his experiences as a student at the university. The story takes place in October 1979. Coincidentally, that is the same month Douglas Adams published his first novel, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It was also the production that Doctor Who Weekly launched. Doreen James was supposed to design the costumes, but she quit the series following a dispute with Lalla Ward on City of Death. The famous scene where the Doctor is chased by the orb while on a bicycle was supposed to take place at night. The think tank space station scientists all bore names associated with Greek islands: Caldera, Akatori, La, and Santori and Fear. The Part 1 joke in which Professor Chronotis forgets that he has a memory like a slave was taken from the story of Douglas Adams's that had been published in February 27, 1965 edition of Eagle and Boy's World, where he was just 12 years old. Graham MacDonald suggested a romantic subplot between Romana and Chris, but this was ignored. Michael Hayes was originally supposed to direct this serial. While in a pub, Tom Baker and Pennant Roberts were approached by the Secretary of St. John's Choirs, who inquired as to whether Doctor Who might require the use of his choir's services. Roberts agreed and included them, singing Chantanogoa Choo Choo as part of the chase scene the next day. Baker was made an honorary fellow of St. John's College in return. The Karags were initially called Krangs, an anagram of the main villain's name, Skagra. Tom Baker had considerable difficulty manoeuvring his boat, much to the consideration of Lalla Ward and the amusement of the spectating undergraduates. During rehearsals, many of the cast members contributed additional comedy material. Douglas Adams was happy that the story was abandoned because he thought it was not up to much. In 1992, Adams signed the video rights for Shada by mistake, allowing the BBC to make a direct-to-video version with linking narration by Tom Baker. Subsequently, Adams requested that his name be removed from the video sleeve and donated his royalties to Comic Relief. Had this story been televised, it would have marked the first time the Gallifreyan language was spoken in a televised story. Working titles for the story was Starburst. Had this story been broadcast when originally intended, from 19th of January to the 23rd of February 1980, this story would have marked the end of the following features of the show: the 1967 arrangement of the Doctor Who theme by Delilah Derbyshire, the tunnel opening sequence by Bernard Lodge, and the Diamond Series logo introduced in The Time Warrior. Graham Williams' tenure as producer. The rest of the show's original run would be produced by John Nathan Turner afterwards. Douglas Adams' tenure as script editor. Dudley Simpson's tenure as incidental music composer. The 1992 and 2017 versions use instrumental music by Sylvester McCoy's era composer Keith McCullum and Mark Ayers, respectively. the latter version featuring music done in Silas Simpson's works. David Birdley as the voice of K9, John Leeson would reprise the role the following seasons onwards. The Fourth Doctor's multicoloured scarf and brown frock hat. The following season would feature the Doctor in Tom Baker's final season on the show in a burgundy and purple scarf and a large burgundy frock coat. The TARDIS prop designed by Barry Newberry. The next 9 years of the show's original run would utilise a new fiberglass prop designed by Tom Yardy Jones. The use of 6-part stories. All future series would span 4 parts at most. The ending featuring the Doctor as an old man makes this the first time we see a classic Doctor as an older Doctor. It has also been theorised by fans that this may be the curator. And finally, as briefly touched upon at the beginning, this was originally going to be the very last Doctor Who ever made, which was a massive risk. Doctor Who was at its height, and so much so that the executives in the BBC actively stepped in to try and prevent this from being the final ever Doctor Who story. This resulted in rewrites and a completely redone story to try and prevent it from being the final ever Doctor Who. However, this was a story that did have some finality to it. As a result, Douglas Adams wasn't actually that keen on making a finale as such, and so he wanted to try and reimagine it and improve it, which was to the BBC's delight, of course. So imagine that. This could have been the very last ever Doctor Who, and it would have been unfinished. And that is it for today. Shada, our 100th episode. I chose Shada because it is such a unique story. It is a story that is incomplete, but at the same time, you can buy it on DVD. You can buy the old VHS if you want. You can even buy audiobooks of it. This is a story which is very unusual, to say the very least, but very interesting nonetheless. It really does have a lot of weird, wacky ideas, such as invisible ships or those weird sort of how do I describe them, mirror polygon sort of monsters involved. It's very much Doctor Who of the 80s and 70s, but also it's very much an ambitious project. It's even got very heroic music in the background. It gives it that sense of this is a very unique adventure. I love the main villain in this, Skarros. He's great as a villain. He's so charming, he's so villainous as well, smug and all that. He's got all those traits that you absolutely adore. I do wonder if he was a stand-in for the Master or some other major villain, or maybe Omega or something like that. It does make you wonder, but of course there's no fact to back that up at the moment. Everything is just saying, oh well, he's just an original villain and he was just made for this story. I do think that is great. The Doctor, I love. The one I've got is the more recent adaptation, I believe, the 2021 one. It's got a few animated segments to fill in the gaps. And it's kind of jarring because you see it in live action, and all of a sudden it'll be animated for 10 seconds and then it'll be live action again. It kind of goes to show how the filming process works. It's a fascinating dive into the film process of Doctor Who. Not everything is a linear, we're going to film the whole of this scene and we're going to film the whole of this, chunk here, or we're going to film it all in order. It's all over the place. Even when I said facts before with Christopher Eccleston and Billy Piper, their first scenes filmed were from 2 completely different episodes that weren't even the first ever episode rows. They were completely different episodes, and this one really shows that when you go from live action to animated, this constant flip-flopping. I've only seen a bit of the Tom Baker one where he stood and talking about it. That one I've only seen bits of, and he does explain, oh, this is what happens. It's kind of, I always think those ones are kind of weird. I know they did it for all the Lost Stories as well. They had some of the former actors, and they go into depth on what happens at this moment in time and all that. It's quite adventurous in a weird way. So yeah, this is a very unique story, and I really like it. I do genuinely really like it. It would be interesting to see what a full, actually filmed story would be like. But I don't think that's possible these days, unfortunately. Maybe one day, we could have it redone, but with a more modern Doctor. I don't know. They did do it with the 8th Doctor. So, there is that. But as a whole, this is a very unique story, a very interesting story, a very fun story as well. From the chase scenes, from the music. I love the music in this particular story. I know it's redone music because the music technically wasn't done at the time, but still, I love it. And I love the ending. Now, sure, the ending was filmed like years later, but I love the ending when you hear Romana talking off in the distance and the Doctor is underneath Tati. He lifts his head and it's old Tom Baker, it's old Fourth Doctor, and he still has that smile. He still has that cheeky, shit-eating grin on his face. I love the ending so much. The ending is fantastic. Genuinely, a really, really good story. And, the behind the scenes is what makes this one so fascinating. And, I listed off all these things that were cut, all the things that would have been the final appearance of. And, it really is a fascinating story to dive into. Really good, and I do recommend it. I 100% recommend it. I've never heard the 8th Doctor version. Don't know how it would work without the visuals, not gonna lie, but still, fantastic story. It's a fantastic lost story, arguably. I mean, it was only half filmed, but fantastic nonetheless. So that is our 100th episode of Did You Know Doctor Who. I hope you enjoyed it. I don't know if I'm going to do any more Did You Know Doctor Who's for a while now, so I'm going to give it a bit of a break. I might return with the odd few here and there, but now that we've reached 100, I hope you enjoyed this series so far, and I will see you next time.